Hello and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about a lighting technique that I think for indoor scenes is better than HDR lighting. So we have over here some HDR, and what that's doing is it's just taking a photograph of an environment with a high bit depth, and it's using that to project light into the room. So we can see here we've got light coming into the room. Now this technique is the undisputed king of emulating natural light. So over here we have what you might want to do if you were going to do an indoor scene, which is just add in a sphere and an emission. I'm going to note right now quickly that I am in the prorender rendering engine, but everything that I'm saying now would be applicable to Cycles or luxrender too. So right now we have this light and it's not doing a very good job. So this is standard lighting, but if we flick over to what I'm calling a spectrum blaster, most seasoned artists are going to know how to do something like this. We can see that instantly we have light of the same tint, but it's not overpowering our scene as it was before, and it's allowing the depths of the objects to come out. If I move over here to a slightly different angle, if I just take away some of the grease pencil there for a second, and we flick back to our standard emission shader, we can see why the difference between these two light sources is just night and day. This looks flat and it's poisoning all the color in this area of our room. And if we go over to our adjusted shader, we can see that it looks very comparable to the HDR lighting, but it's a more suitable use for an indoor space. So what we do is to do this is I'm going to head over to our shading room now, and I'm just going to leave that there for a second, and we're going to discuss how this shader is constructed. So first of all, I'm just going to move my camera up to my light source here, and I'm going to show you what the first step in constructing this is. So the first step is to add in a gradient texture. And you're not going to be able to see that yet because we don't have just a black and a white. So yeah, if we send this to black and to white, we will see when I've got the camera right, we will see we've got here a primary color and we've got a tint. So what we do is we just add our gradient texture and a mapping node. We take our mapping node into the gradient texture and then out to a mix shader. Now connected to the mix shader is two emissions. Now if we think of what we're doing when we're using an HDR lighting, the reason it works so good is because we're getting a whole spectrum of light coming in, and that's the exact same thing of what we're doing with this very simple shader setup. So if I move this back over to our initial thing here, so what I'm doing is I'm not telling it to render one color, I'm telling it to render a gradient between our first emission that we've set and the second emission. And now to set the value for that, I just add in a multiplier or value node into both and out to the surface, and that's basically how you do it. It's a technique that's often much more sane for indoor lighting than an HDR, and you can see here we have an HDR with this very simple shader setup working together, and you can see that there's no huge clash of color hue in the scene. It looks like a continuous scene without any problems. And if we just move back up to our simple emission, we can see here we have this massive border that's a real problem for us to deal with. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I always like to hear feedback on these tutorials, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.